So before we get into our text here, this is what we're going to do real quick. Now, for this to work, first of all, I need us to actually talk, okay? And if you don't, then I'll start calling you. Second, I need us to be honest, okay? I need us to be honest. This is a spot where we're all going to be honest, and we're not going to criticize or embarrass or anything like that with this particular activity. All right, so this is what I need, and people can just start talking. Give me what you got. First, I need you to tell me about the most physical pain you have ever been in.
Labor.
She wins.
Good start.
She wins. We're done.
That's the end of the game, everybody.
Next call.
Let's have a good night. What else?
I broke my arm.
You broke what?
My arm.
Broke your
We're
arm?
on 1 Peter, right?
First day of school.
Where are we at?
What else? Talk to me. Most physical pain.
Appendicitis.
Appendicitis. Okay. Fair.
What about the time that?
Zach.
We're in first.
Zach, where are we at? First
Getting
Peter.
hurt at that.
I've never been.
Yeah,
First Peter 5. What else? The most physical pain you have been in.
Oh, have been it, or can I predict what?
Have in the
Okay.
past. All right. Anybody else? Most physical pain you have been in.
Kale, why do you just write Kale and underline it?
I'm gonna say cortisone shot in the joints of the ankle.
Oh, yeah. I got
Dear
it.
Lord in heaven, I threw up immediately afterwards.
Yeah, I got it.
I also had chili right before I did that, so that might not have been the best choice. All right, next we're going to go over here. What is the most difficult thing you have ever been through? Maybe not physical pain, all right, but the most difficult thing you've ever done or ever been through. If that's true, then you are going to have a long and blessed life.
It's true.
Oh, my God.
Wow.
What else? Scariest thing, hardest thing.
I need to raise my hand.
Talk to me.
Definitely.
Okay. What else?
I almost drowned one time.
True story. You almost did.
I did too. My sister almost let me.
Here we go.
And if I want to make her feel bad, I'll say something about it. She'll almost start crying.
And I'll hear about it all night. Never let this go.
Already ate that cupcake.
Me personally, okay, because again, I'm gonna do this with you. Me personally, most difficult thing that I have been through, sitting in a closet praying to God that my family was not going to be killed by a tornado. Most difficult thing I have ever gone through, other than watching Amanda give birth, but we won't get into that.
Please don't.
How about when Levi was in the hospital?
Yeah, that was bad too. But I wasn't afraid he might die at that point. What else? Anything else?
Did I say like another thing?
Sure.
I went back into the hospital after I was 10 days old and had a fever of...
But you don't remember that.
No, I saw pictures of it.
All right, now look, not to downplay your suffering, but we're looking for things that we actually remember. Yes.
2 weeks after I had the appendicitis, something went wrong, and then I had to go back to the hospital.
Was this when we took you out to play football?
That would probably.
And he disappeared for a little bit and
Because
came
his guts
back
were
and
coming
said
out.
his stitches were coming out.
Oh my God.
Yeah, his guts are coming out.
All right.
Last
All right, last thing. Listen up. Last thing. Now, my prediction, this is the one where everyone is going to shut down and not talk. The last thing, okay? I need some great volunteers. The hardest thing, or the most difficult thing that you've been through, or the worst thing that has ever happened to you as a direct result of being a follower of Christ, or identifying as such. Okay? Now I say as a direct result, meaning, like, for example, the tornado passing by was not because I'm a Christian. That had nothing to do with that. Okay?
Like losing friends or being shunned.
Okay. Is that yours?
Well, yeah, we know. Oh, yeah, it's right. Sorry, I'm just
We're your friends, Dolphins.
On Wednesdays.
What else? Worst thing that has happened.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's right. Because
No,
don't
write that.
Because we're Christians, we came to church and you made us eat those.
You volunteered, you didn't make it.
You're right. You're right.
I said if nobody else wants to do it.
We'll count that for Noah and not.
You didn't have
What
to
else?
find
Talk to me. Dig deep, guys. Think. Talk to me. Maybe nothing bad has happened to you as a result of it.
Maybe it's gonna happen.
Anything else? Anybody? Anybody? All right. Okay, we'll come back to this in a bit. We're in 1 Peter 5. All right, 1 Peter 5. We're going to actually pick up in verse 8 tonight. All right, the section is 1 through 11, but we're actually going to start with 8 for the purposes of what we've got going on here. So, perfect. All right. So we're going to pick up in verse 8, all right? And we'll come back to this in a second. But again, what we're looking at is worst physical pain, worst thing you've ever gone through, and the worst thing that's ever happened to you as a result of being a Christian. All right? What? All right. So, verse 8. Stay with me, all right? Verse 8. We got to make the most of our time. All right, so verse 8. 1 Peter chapter 5, verse 8 says, "Be sober-minded, be watchful. Your adversary, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion, seeking someone to devour." All right, so the first thing we see here, we get a picture of our greatest enemy. All right? How many of you would say, and I know you're high schoolers, how many of you would say you have enemies?
Oh yeah.
Lots of course, Caleb does.
You have enemies.
Me
Who
and
has
Adam
enemies?
have, me and Adam have one in common, but no, me and Adam have a lot in common.
Okay? Hunter's only a so-so?
I go to Auburn. I go to Auburn. Nothing really happens in Auburn.
Wow.
Perhaps.
Tracy School.
All right, listen up. Stay with me.
There's a bathroom
Wait, where we
downstairs.
Guys, stay with me. All right? We need to make the most of our time. All right? This is very important. This is the very end of 1 Peter. I need you to stay with me. Now, be aware, before we go any deeper into this, that some things may be said tonight that some of you may find offensive. First of all, I'm okay with that because I'm a big boy. Second, please know that all the things I say that may be offensive to you apply just as much to me as they do to you. Okay? Just as much to every adult in the room. It's not just you guys because you're the kids. Alright, so be aware of that. Alright, so if I offend you, and I may not, but if I do, first, be aware that this applies to me as well. And second, don't hate me forever. Alright? But if you do, it's okay because I'm a big boy. Alright? So we're going to look at our enemy, alright? First of all, what does it call him? It says your adversary, the devil. What's an adversary?
Someone who's going against you.
Okay? An adversary is an enemy, alright? It's an enemy. In Hebrew, the term devil actually translates adversary or accuser. Alright, so an adversary is not just like, oh, I don't really like that guy. We don't really get along. We just don't click. Adversary means this is like a mortal enemy. Okay? So the Bible tells us that the devil is our adversary. What that means is he does not like you. Not even a little bit. Alright? None at all. Alright? So he says your adversary, the devil. And then again, that term devil translates in Hebrew to adversary or to accuser. Now we know what an accuser is, right? An accuser is a sister or brother who points at you and says they did it. Alright? I got Noah and Adam looking at each other. Okay? An accuser is that one that points the finger and tries to pin all of the blame on you. Okay? Now, this translation, stay with me. This translation, accuser, alright, this also carries in the Hebrew, because that language is a lot different from ours, alright? It carries the idea of striking or stabbing. Okay, so like a violent attack. This is not just someone pointing and saying, he did it. He stole the cookies. All right? This is a violent attack. This is striking or stabbing. Okay, this is intent to harm. All right? So we're shaping a picture here of what Peter says about the devil. He's our adversary. He's our serious enemy, and he's out to cause harm. Okay? He's out to accuse, and he's out to cause harm. Okay? Moving forward, he says your adversary, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion, seeking someone to devour. All right? Prowls around like a roaring lion. How many of you have ever been to the zoo? Been to the zoo. Okay? Man, it's hot in here. Caleb, open the door for me. Just stand at the door. All right? Prowls around like a roaring lion. Now, if you've been to the zoo and you've seen the lions, most of the time the lions at the zoo are doing what? Sleeping. Okay? They're sleepy. Alright, but if you've maybe watched National Geographic or Animal Planet or whatever, and you've seen lions, alright, understand there are some creatures in nature that were made for certain things, alright? You pay attention to the way a cheetah is built. It was built for one purpose, speed. Okay? Everything in the design of that animal is for speed. Everything. Alright? You pay attention to a lion. A lion was built to do one thing. Hunt and kill. Okay? Which is actually two things. Alright? A lion was made to hunt and to kill. Alright? And he says that the devil is prowling like a roaring lion. So not just a lion, not a sleepy lion, an angry lion. Alright? And he's seeking to devour. Now this is a roaring lion. So again, you ever been at the zoo and maybe the lion was awake and you've ever heard it roar? Anybody? One time when I was at the zoo, and you can hear that junk all over the zoo. I mean, there's no place in the zoo you can be and not hear that joker when he gets going. Okay? Except maybe like deep in the bathroom. Alright? So, he's like a roaring lion, and then he tells us the last thing, he is seeking, which means he is on the lookout, he is on the hunt, he has a goal, and what's that goal? Someone to devour. Okay? Devour. Not harm, not injure, devour. Okay? Devour doesn't even mean just eat. It means like to eat greedily and quickly and forcefully. Alright? Like some of you guys just devoured that bread. Alright? So what we see here, stay with me, what we see in this verse, alright, your enemy, the devil, has absolutely no good feelings towards you whatsoever. None. Okay? He has one purpose on this earth, and that purpose is to get you to follow him. Okay? His purpose is to get you to follow him, and his purpose is eventually to spiritually kill you. Spiritually kill you and condemn you to eternity in hell. That's his goal. Okay? That's his goal for you. That's his goal for me and my family. That's his goal for my children. That's his goal for any human being on planet Earth. Okay? He has no good feelings for you. Then Peter goes forward. All right, at verse 9, he says, are we in verse 9? Yeah. All right. Before we go to 9, to the beginning of 8. So he gives us some tips. He says, because of this. All right, we're going to the beginning of 8. But because this enemy is out there, he says to do two things. Be sober-minded and be vigilant. Be sober-minded and be vigilant. Now, sober-minded we talked about last week. All right? It means to be serious. It means to take things seriously like some of you are not so good at. Okay? It also refers to, you remember last week we talked about the mortification of sin. Who remembers what that means? Mortification is a big word. Put it to death. Okay? So being sober-minded means you take it seriously and you daily put your sin to death. And then he says be vigilant. What does it mean to be vigilant? To be watchful, to be aware. Okay? We are to be vigilant against him. So we are not to be careless. Okay? We're also it doesn't say to be paranoid and to be terrified, but it says to be vigilant. All right? When a watchman is vigilant, that means he is paying attention and he's prepared to respond. Okay? When a soldier's pulling guard duty, that means he is paying attention and he is prepared to respond. It doesn't mean he's terrified. Okay? He's not shooting at every random noise that he hears. That would be bad. He's also not careless and going to sleep. He's being vigilant. Okay? So we are to be vigilant as well. We are to be on guard and alert to the things that the devil is trying to do. All right? Then we go on to 9. He says, resist him, firm in your faith, knowing that the same kinds of suffering are being experienced by your brotherhood throughout the world. All right? Beginning of 9. Beginning of 9. Resist him, how? Firm in your faith. Resist him firm in your faith. Okay? So we are to resist him. But the first place we are to resist him is through our what? What does it say? Through our faith. Okay? Through our faith. What's the first thing the devil attacks? Your faith. Okay? Your faith. And listen to me. That's his game plan. Because if he gets your faith to crack, then you're done. Okay? If he gets you to give up on your faith, what you need?
Alright.
Okay, good talk. If he gets you to quit your faith, then the rest of you is done for. Okay? You give up on your faith, and you're all his. Because if you don't have any faith, you go straight back to what? Straight back to the world, like we talked about on Sunday. Okay? You go straight back to the world. Do you need somebody in here?
No, but
Okay.
I don't know.
Stay with me. So we go straight back to the world. So he attacks our faith. Alright? He attacks our faith. So Peter says, resist him firm in your faith. In Ephesians, Paul talks about the armor of God. We've all heard that before, right? The armor of God. And he says, above all, to take up what?
Faith.
The shield of faith. Okay? Above all, he talks about the helmet and the breastplate and the shoes and the belt. And he says, above all, take up the shield of faith. Faith more than anything. Alright? That's your first line of defense. Just like if you're going into battle and you're carrying a shield, what's your first line of defense?
The people in front of you.
Shield.
Your shield. Okay? If it's not going to be a serious answer, keep it to yourself. Your shield is your first line of defense. Okay? You don't trust the armor here if you've got armor here as well. Okay? We just got done a couple days ago. We watched both Captain Americas back to back. Love the new Captain America movies, all right? And he carries that shield around, and that's his first line of defense. Okay? In the second one, Winter Soldier, which is the best one. Okay, in Winter Soldier, he's fighting this guy on the ship who's like mixed martial arts to the max. All right? But he doesn't ever get a chance to get to him because every time he goes to throw a punch or a kick or jump on him or whatever, guess what's in front of him? Big old shield. Can't even get through. Okay? So Paul says our faith is our shield, and Peter says you resist the devil in faith. You resist him in faith. If he breaks your faith, then you're done. So you stand firm, he says, in your faith. And then he says, and this is what we're really going to get to now, he says, knowing that the same kinds of suffering are being experienced by your brotherhood throughout the world. Now, we've been talking in 1 Peter about suffering a pretty good deal these last 2 or 3 weeks. Because Peter really talks about suffering. Okay, remember our context? Christians in foreign lands. He calls them exiles. He calls them aliens. Okay? Christians that are not living in good, nice, Christian gated communities. Christians who are living among a hostile people. Alright, so he says, endure your suffering. He says, stand firm in your faith, knowing that the same suffering is being experienced by your brothers around the world. Alright? Now let's talk for a second about suffering. Let's look at some examples of suffering. We have some up here on the board. Okay? Labor, my friends, that is suffering. And if you have not experienced it, first of all, hopefully you will be married someday. Second, it is an excruciating thing to be in the room for. That is suffering to the max. Okay? If I didn't know that I would get in all kinds of trouble for not being in there, I would choose to not be in there. Alright?
And it also was bad for me.
I understand. Okay? Broken arm. I have been fortunate enough to never break a bone. Okay?
Then knock on wood.
Thank goodness. Alright? No broken bones. Appendicitis. Never had it. Heard it's awful.
It sucks.
Alright? This thing we talked about with Caleb. No bueno. Alright? This thing here, cortisone shot in the ankle joints. That was some suffering, my friends. Threw up right afterwards. That's the only time pain has ever caused me to throw up. And I thought that I might die. Not really. Thought I might never walk again. Okay? Hardest things we've been through. AP Cal. Don't lie.
It's awful.
Okay? Death. That's tough. Death in the family. Sure is. Alright? And most of us have, to some extent, dealt with the death in the family. Alright? Almost drowning. That's pretty traumatic. Been there, done that. Okay? I was very afraid to get in water for a very long time. This. Alright? This was awful. Sitting in the closet over my family, praying to God that we weren't about to die because there was nothing else to do. There's nowhere to run, nowhere to hide, nothing to do about this thing except to sit and listen to it come. And they say it sounds like a freight train. It sounds just like a freight train. Okay? You can hear it coming, and it's the worst thing I have ever been through. Nothing left to do but pray to God that we're going to be okay. Alright? It was awful. So was the cleanup. Okay?
I was out there for 1 day and I regret being out there.
Now, that wasn't even a tornado. That was just a tree we cut down. That was just a tree we dropped. That wasn't tornado cleanup. Alright? Now here, losing friends, losing family. That's tough too. Okay? People don't want to talk to you anymore. People don't want to associate with you. Lose those connections you have. That can be tough. Alright? Now let's look at some examples of suffering real quick. In the book of Job, we know that story. This dude's famous for suffering. Okay, in the book of Job, Job lost in the first chapter. Stay with me. In the first chapter, he lost his possessions, he lost his family, and he lost his health. He lost everything. All his sons and daughters died, and all their husbands and wives. He lost all of his possessions, and he lost his health. He was very sick, painfully sick, boils all over him. All he had left was a wife who told him, you know what you should do, Job? You should just curse God and die. Just curse God and die. Okay? More examples of suffering. Mike, give me that next slide. Jesus had 12 disciples. Those 12 disciples were given a mission when Jesus left earth. He gave them a great commission, and he said, you go spread the gospel around the world. They were given a mission. And all of them, with the exception of Judas, all of them carried this mission out. And we see here what happened to them. Look at this list. Okay? Andrew, crucified. Most terrible death imaginable. Crucified. Nailed to a cross and hung in the hot sun to suffocate to death while birds eat you. Okay? Bartholomew, beaten and then crucified. First James, stoned to death. They threw rocks at his head until he died. Until they cracked his skull open. Other James, brother of John, head cut off. Beheaded. Right? That one may have been one of the milder deaths because maybe it was quick. John, we'll come back to him. Died of old age. That sounds, hey, John made it out okay. He was exiled to an island. That's okay. I'll take an island. Died of old age. I'll take that. We'll come back to John. Judas, not Iscariot, stoned. Matthew, speared until he died. Peter, crucified upside down, because as they were killing him, Peter said, I'm not worthy to be crucified like my Lord Jesus Christ. If you're going to crucify me, you do it upside down. Philip, crucified. Simon, crucified. Thomas, speared. Matthias, stoned. Rocks thrown at him until he died. Okay? Now we go back to John, died of old age. Exiled to an island, and then died of old age. But before he got there, they tried their best to kill John. They put John in a giant metal pot full of boiling oil. And it didn't kill him. Okay? Now I promise you, it was excruciatingly painful. But it didn't kill him. Me personally, if I got to that point, I would probably be hoping to die. But he didn't. So while he's exiled, he's probably horribly disfigured. Okay? Not one of these men made it out peacefully. Not one. One died a somewhat peaceful death after he was tortured. Okay? This is suffering for the sake of the gospel. Give me the next one, Mike. Moving quickly. Some of you may have seen this list recently. These are 21 Egyptians. These are 21 Egyptian Christians who were captured by ISIS last week, who were marched to the edge of a beach and were filmed as their heads were cut off. Because they said, we follow Jesus Christ, no matter what you say or do. Okay? In that video, they say that even some of the men, you can see them as they're kneeling and they're about to have their heads taken off. And see, when terrorists cut your head off, I don't know if you know, they don't do it quickly. They have a knife and they saw. I'm not trying to be disgusting or freaking anyone out, but I want you to understand this is suffering. They don't have a giant axe or sword and swing down in one clean stroke. They have a knife and they begin at the throat and they saw until they go all the way through. Okay? These 21 people said, I'll take that rather than saying I don't follow Christ. And as they're kneeling, about to have their heads cut off, they're praying. They're not begging for mercy. They're not taking back their faith. They're not converting to Islam. They're not weeping. They're praying. And all 21 died. I read today, back in December, 4 children in Iraq, 15 years old and younger. Children were caught by some members of ISIS and were told, you will convert to Islam. You will follow the Prophet. And they said, no, we follow Jesus. And we always have. And they said again, you will convert to Islam or we will kill you. And these children, ages 15 and younger, your age and younger, said, no, we follow Jesus and we always have, and Jesus has always been with us. And all 4 of those children had their heads cut off. That's suffering for the gospel. Okay? Now, in light of this is the part that may offend some of you, but this is just as much for me as it is for you. In light of this, to me, it feels a little bit ridiculous to sit at home in the nice, cozy United States of America and say, I can't read my Bible because I'm not really for reading. I'm not very good at it, I don't really like it. That's ridiculous. It's ridiculous for me to feel like not watching that movie that all my other friends get to watch is suffering for being a Christian. That's not suffering. It's ridiculous to me to hear people say and think that not being able to sleep with your girlfriend or boyfriend is suffering because you carry the label Christian, and you can't because mom and dad will throw you out of the house or the church people will get all over you. That's not suffering. We don't know anything about suffering. Look at the list we came up with, guys. Losing friends, losing family. They're not even dead. They just don't talk to you anymore. They didn't die. Okay? You didn't die. We don't know how to suffer. We don't know what suffering is. We don't suffer for the gospel. And neither do I. I've never had my life threatened because I said I'm a follower of Jesus Christ. Never have. Possibly, probably never will. Never have. We don't suffer. These people suffer. Okay? This is suffering for the sake of the gospel. And this is what Peter's talking about when he says, you bear your suffering. Okay? So, moving very quickly because we're pretty much out of time, but I really want to finish this. Real quick, I'm not here to downplay the things that you go through. I understand that the issues you deal with are just as real to you as mine are to me. You don't have a mortgage to pay, so that's not an issue to you. But the issues that you deal with are just as real to you as they are to me. All right? And when Peter says at the end there in verse 10 that after you have suffered a little while, the God of grace, who has called you to his eternal glory, will restore, confirm, strengthen, and establish you. That includes your suffering as well. That does include friends not talking to you anymore. That does include family members turning their back on you. That does include relationships ending because you're willing to draw a line and say, I'm not going to cross it. God knows about that suffering too, and he promises that he will take care of it. He will strengthen and restore you. Okay? I'm not here to talk about legalism either. I'm not here to tell you that you must not watch that rated R movie because that will make God like you more, because it won't. I'm not here to tell you that you must not sleep with your boyfriend or girlfriend because that will make God like you more and that will get you into heaven, because it won't at all. Okay? I'm here to tell you that we should be willing to suffer the way we do because of the things God has done for us. I would be perfectly happy, willingly stand in between any beating, any torture, any punishment and Amanda because she means that much to me. Not because it's going to make her like me more. If somebody beats me instead of her, she's not going to like me more. But because she means that much to me. I would do the same thing for my children. Not because it would make them like me more, but because they mean that much to me. And we suffer for Christ, not because we think it will make him like us more, or we can earn our way into heaven, but because he's worth that much. Alright? Real quick, I want you to watch this video, and then we're going to have just a couple more minutes to talk. I know we're a little over our time, but it's okay. Stay with me. This is exactly where I would have every single one of you be if I could. This is where I would be. Okay? Finishing up right here. I found this song and listened to it a good bit right around Easter last year. And about 3 weeks after Easter is when this tornado came through. And in the aftermath of that tornado, I remember thinking, if that tornado had plowed right through the center of my house, and I was the only person that survived, if it had killed my wife and my son and my unborn daughter, would I be able to say that? Would I still be able to worship? Would I still be able to praise him? And that's where I want to be. That's where I want you guys. I want you to that point where in the middle of whatever suffering, you can still praise him, you can still worship him, and you can still know that he's good. But the only way you're going to get there is to know him. You can't follow someone you don't know. You won't follow someone you don't know. You have to know him, and then you follow him. Let's pray.